The entire Biden administration living in a fantasy land where down is up, night is day, and dogs are sleeping with cats, and old people are young again. It's why they think the economy is doing great, you guys, and the president is in perfect mental and physical health. He needs help. Let's go to the economy first. Today, we got a comical amount of bad news. Wholesale inflation in May hitting a near record of 10.8% from over May of last year. And that's the day after we learned consumer inflation up 8.6%. Gas prices still at a record high today, $5.01 a gallon. That is up nearly 40 cents in just the last few weeks. Summer drive planned. Food prices, forget about it. On top of that, property values, they're plunging. So are savings rates. And primary voters in Nevada today saying this is the #1 issue. Watch.
Inflation, gas prices. I mean, the prices of groceries are ridiculous. There's no need for this.
The economy.
Fuel, the economy.
Yeah. So how is the president responding? Well, today he released a comprehensive plan to fix everything. JK, he didn't. He literally thinks everything is great because he's insane. Watch.
Under my plan for the economy, we made extraordinary progress. And we put America in a position to tackle a worldwide problem that's worse everywhere but here, inflation. It's sapping the strength of a lot of families.
Isn't that extraordinary? Extraordinary progress? It's extraordinary, but it ain't progress. Every indicator has the economy heading south quickly. His press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, she's also going full Baghdad Bob. Watch this.
The way that we see this is that the American people are well positioned to face these challenges because of the economic historic gains that we have made under this president in the last 16 months.
Doctor, my leg is broken. The bone is literally sticking out of the skin. You're well positioned. Just walk it off. Historic gains. Good Lord. We all see proof of inflation every time we buy anything. So why is the White House gaslighting and denying reality? Let's meet tonight's party panel. They have a lot to say. We've got attorney and Republican strategist Alexandra Wilkes is back. We've got Democrat strategist, radio host, Fox News contributor, and all-around California gal Leslie Marshall in the his, and Radical with Shane Hazel podcast host, Libertarian Georgia governor candidate. It is Shane Hazel. He's tan, he's rested, he's ready. Let's do this, panel. Okay, so I will start with you, Alexandra. Extraordinary progress is such a hurtful phrase when people cannot afford basic things. What are they doing here? I don't understand. Please help me through this. You are a political mastermind. Certainly, you've got to see this strategy.
You know, I don't think that I can, Kennedy, because he's sapping my energy with this talk. I mean, starting with Janet Yellen back in 2021 saying that all of these massive government checks they were handing out, it was just going to lead to inflation that was transitory. Now here we are with the highest inflation in decades. The average American family is incurring hundreds of dollars in extra costs a month just to keep up. It's just so absurd. And I think where Joe Biden his moment to seize the big middle.
She's talking again.
We already have the left of him trying to, basically put him out to pasture. Yeah. So at this point, this is really becoming about his legacy, not just as a president, but a human being. I mean, does he want to be the guy who was in charge when infants were starving because there was no formula or because they couldn't fill up their gas tanks? Like, what is he trying to do here? He needs to immediately adopt some of the things that the far left base has prevented him from doing, like ramping up domestic oil production, and saying it's common sense. And you know what? For a short-term benefit here for the American people, I'm going to go ahead and do this. But I don't know that he has the wherewithal to do it.
I don't know either, and I would love to hear common sense right now, Leslie. I really would. I would embrace it if there were a glimmer of some sort of cohesive or rational plan here, and I just don't see it. And, blaming the global economy, blaming Republicans, blaming Vladimir Putin, all convenient things to skirt out of accountability and responsibility that this administration should be taking every single day.
Well, it's interesting because one of our co-workers, Titus, actually tweeted something, and I don't always agree with him the other day, and it was a graph that showed how much domestic drilling there was, and there's actually been more in the Biden administration than there was in the Trump administration or many presidents, Democrat or Republican, in the past. Here's the problem with all of this, and it's whether, and of course the party in power is going to be blamed. But the bottom line is there is no one thing. For example, we just heard from Alexandra, policies and legislation that costs money, but economists say that accounts for 2% or less of inflation. So we're talking 98% or more of inflationary rising is not due to policies of this president or due to policies of the Democrats. So what does that translate to now? It translates into something people don't want to hear, which is that this White House, that any politician or any president can't just fix inflation. It's a global problem. We know that the feds have a problem. If they're too aggressive, they push us into a recession, and that affects the global economy. And then if they're not aggressive enough, then we're kind of where we are, where we were prior to the COVID pandemic, which lasted for 6 months.
Yeah, I want to bring Shane in, so stop talking.
Longer.
Okay. The global economy excuse is a very common Democrat talking point right now. And again, it goes to my initial point, which is if you blame the global economy, if you blame Republicans, if you blame Putin, you don't have to create new policies that would help people in the short term and the long term. But they can really, really screw this up further, Shane, because they're talking about more spending. What would that do to a very fragile, cratering economy?
The economy is not going to get better. And the thing is, if they had any economic sense whatsoever, they'd go back to 1913. They start talking about the Fed. Then they talk about FDR. And then they would talk about Nixon getting off of the gold standard. When your economy is absolutely trash the way ours is, and you add $6 trillion under Biden, and I think it was what, $2 to $3 trillion under Trump. This is a Democrat and a Republican problem. This is why you don't vote for these people. That's why you don't support these people. They are warmongers. They are part of the murder cult, the banking cabal, the elite politicians, the zombie corporations that have been destroying this country and destroying your dollars, killing poor people and middle class in America. We're probably somewhere around 30% in terms of the inflation rate if we're actually adjusted for 1980 CPI, which, we're not. The Fed is going to try to hike interest rates. And in a Keynesian economy, when you hike interest rates, you slow spending. And when you slow spending in a Keynesian economy, you get recessions and crashes and Black Fridays.
So fast.
And I hate to be that person that it's going to be it's bedlam. Like, you cannot fix this going forward with DC. You probably have a decentralization effect where the states or regions kind of go their way, but they're going to have to start looking at a more secure type of medium of exchange in terms of money, and that would be Bitcoin. And I know it's all down and it's crazy and everything.
It's doing great right now.
Understand
I love you, Shane, but that one, I may agree with you. I love buy the dip. It's a tough sell this week. That one may not be at the top of the list for
this is a
for
time
most
when
people.
you buy. This is
but at some point, sure.
Time.
At some point, sure. But
it's on sale.
Yeah,
get in.
It sure is. Yeah, it's worthless. Let's go to another issue, the president's health. The New York Times claiming Democrats quietly questioning the president's mental capacity for a potential run for re-election in 2024. Wow. Last night on CNN, his press secretary once again proving she has no idea what she's talking about. Karine Jean-Pierre claiming with a straight face she can't even keep up with the president. He's like the Energizer Bunny, you guys. That's when he had a bunny at Easter. Watch.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him. We just got back from New Mexico. We just got back from California. That is not a question that we should be even asking. Just look at the work that he does.
What work? That is a question we should be asking every single day of every commander-in-chief. Are they fit to lead? Will Grandpa Joe be able to run again? And should we get some medical records to prove he is, in fact, mentally and physically fit? Because I don't think he is. You know what, Alexandra? I'm old enough to remember when then President Trump's personal physician was attacked by the press in a protracted press conference about the former president's health, and they were just railing into him. They wanted proof that he was sick and wrong in the head. Why aren't we seeing the same thing with Joe Biden? Because, frankly, I think we should.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it goes to show the double standards that have long existed in the media for Republican candidates versus Democratic candidates. And in Joe Biden's case, I think that for the media in particular, they understand what the problem here is for Democrats, because the Democrats, by the way, in the New York Times, who are questioning his mental fitness, they're not really doing so out of concern. They're doing so out of their own self-interest.
Of course.
I bet quite a few of them would like to be a part of a winning team or the candidate themselves in 2024 to take over for Joe Biden, who I think any reasonable American could say gracefully is not doing so well.
No, he's not doing well. And the latest Quinnipiac poll had him at 33%. The RCP average is 38%, Leslie. I mean, it's not like Trump numbers, because Trump always had garbage numbers because half the country absolutely hated him with a blinding passion. His numbers really didn't go anywhere. Joe Biden was sitting at 60% a year and a half ago, and now he is so deep in the toilet, you're going to have to call a plumber, not a new chief of staff. And I worry for the country with your shallow bench.
I'm sure the country will be fine and will be here long after we're all gone, including all of these politicians. Alexandra, I would say it is political interest, but that goes both ways. Democrats and Republicans not concerned for the president either way. Let's go back to G.W. Bush, though, shall we? Kennedy, he had ratings, approval ratings much lower than the current president and the past three presidents.
Absolutely not much lower.
You know, but George W. Bush's mental and physical health weren't questioned. Certainly the press can ask that, but I think we also know fact. No press secretary, whether they're a Democrat or Republican press secretary, is going to throw their boss under the bus or discuss anything. No one should be surprised by that question, with regard to the medical situation of the president.
Especially one who looks around to shake hands with thin air, who trips going up the steps of Air Force One and makes gaffes day after day after day. He's noticeably more exhausted now than he was 6 months ago. I can't imagine what he's going to look like 6 months from now. Your thoughts, Shane?
Oh, maybe in hospice. I don't know. And here's the thing is, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I really don't care. I just know the man is inept. I think he brings into question absolutely, you know, what a garbage kind of guy he is, that his family doesn't take care of him, doesn't pull him off stage, doesn't take him out of the White House and care for him. But I guess, you know, when you're sniffing kids all the time and you're doing all these, I don't know, things in terms of covering up for your son with a laptop that does, I don't know, brings in big money for the big guy or whatever. Like, this is who Joe Biden is. He is in the last stage of his life. And here's the best thing that the Democrats could do: run Donald Trump as the Democrat, and then he can face off against Dave Smith from the Libertarian Party, and everybody else can just have a good laugh.
So it'd be Democrat Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, Dave Smith. I will pay to watch that debate.